Hello you guys, Lo-Fi Art here, and today I will be bringing you guys my first ever tutorial. I know you guys have asked about tutorials when it comes to outlining and especially shading, and since today I will be working on a portrait piece, I decided to do a little tutorial on shading specifically, and a very basic introduction to what goes into getting nice blends, nice hues, nice transitions in your shading. So without further ado, let's get started. Here I'm just laying out the materials I will be using. These are Mars Lumograph Black Series graphite pencils. I am gonna be using a 2B, 4B, 6B, and 8B pencils, as well as tortillions for blending. As you guys can see here, the piece I will be doing, I'm gonna be concentrating on the black portion. There's some very deep blacks that have to blend into some lighter blacks, lighter shades. And I will be showing you guys how to get those nice blends and how to really make your art transition smoothly. I will be starting with a 2B pencil. As you guys can see, I'm just shading, I'm just going over this portion, and this is layering number 1. This is layer number 1 of the shading process. I am simply doing one layer of 2B graphite. You know, not really concentrated on getting deep blacks, not really concentrated on getting hues right now. I am simply just shading with 2B, making sure that my gradient is smooth overall. And then I grab the tortillion and I blend what I just shaded. So as I'm blending it, I'm trying to smooth out, you know, the shading that I just did with a pencil. You guys can see here, I'm making sure to trying to get rid of those little white spots that you see all over. And obviously when you blend, it just starts looking a lot smoother. It starts looking a lot more even. And after I'm done with that first layer, I move on and grab the 4B pencil. And then I just do another layer. I literally go over the same portion that I just shaded. And I lay down another layer, this time with a darker pencil, a 4B pencil. If you guys don't know how pencils work, the higher the B value, the darker the pencil is going to be. This set goes all the way up to A, so you can get some really nice blacks you guys can see with the rest of the picture. And but I don't just start off right off the bat with 8B, you know. If you want a smooth gradient transition, layering is going to be key. So right here, I started with a 2B and I'm moving on with a 4B, and I'm once again shading the entire area, making sure to cover the piece as much as possible. If you guys paid attention, I'm already making the darker spot transition darker. Like you guys see right here, that little concave area is gonna be a lot darker, especially here. This top area is blending from a really deep black to a lighter black, and I'm already focusing there. I'm bringing the tortillion again and I blend the hue that I just laid, the layer that I just laid. Once again, trying to make sure to get rid of those white spots. You don't want to completely get rid of them because some are gonna be highlights, and you know, highlights also make your picture pop a little bit more. But right here, I'm just making sure to blend in the layer that I just did. And as you guys can see, I'm focusing on the top because that's mostly where the transition is gonna happen. Those little concave areas, like right there and right there, that's where the darks really transition into some lighter grays. So I really want to blend that part. Now I'll bring in the 6B pencil, and you guessed it, I do one more layer. And I'm starting at the top because, like I said, that's where the really deep black transitions into the gray. As you guys can see, the middle area, it's already lighter compared to the rest. That's obviously on purpose because that's gonna be the lighter shade in the composition. And I'm really just darkening the areas that are transitioning from a deep black to a more light gray. Like I said, this is just another layer on top of the 2 layers that I just did. So this is now the 3rd layer in this composition. And once I'm done with that, I bring in the tortilla once again, blend it, make sure everything transitions smoothly. You don't want to just rely on tortillas to make your shading smooth. When you shade with a pencil, make sure to apply even pressure, apply more pressure when needed. And that'll make your job easier in the long run. Tortillas work really well for blending. I mean, even tissue paper and really any type of paper-based material works really well for blending. But you don't want to just rely on them. You want to, right off the bat with the pencil, start transitioning smoothly. And then finally, after I'm done with the 6B layer, I bring in the deep black 8B layer. This is the darkest pencil I have. You get some really nice deep blacks with this. And as you can see, I started from the top because that's where the transition is mostly happening. So I'm really darkening that area. And I'm still leaving the middle area relatively light compared to the rest, because like I said, that's where the lighter grayish hues are concentrated. But in order to get those lighter grays and those nice transitions from a very deep black to a light gray, you don't just right off the bat start off with a black pencil and then just lift the pressure of the pencil and then try to get a grayish gradient. I mean, you could do that, but layering is going to be key to really making sure that all of your layers are looking nicely transitioned and smooth. Here I bring in the tortilla once again, and I just blend right in the deep black layer that I just laid on top of everything. So to recap, so far I laid down a 2B pencil layer, blended it, and then I laid down another 4B graphite layer, blended it, and then finally another 6B layer, blended it, and actually the final one was the 8B layer, and then I blended that into the entire composition. And as you guys can see, tortillas, they keep a lot of the graphite that it picks up from blending. So for this next areas, I didn't even start off with a 2B pencil. I just brought the tortilla and then I started shading right in with the leftover graphite that was already in the tortilla. That way I find this to be smoother if you just lay down a shading layer with a tortilla that already has blended graphite in it. The graphite is already compressed, it's already smoothed out, and you don't have to deal with a lot of roughness. This paper that I'm using isn't the best for realism, I would say. It's good for bringing in textures, but it's not the best for really nice smooth transitions. So I will be switching paper soon, but it's still not the worst. So, and it takes a good beating when it comes to erasing. Right here I'm just using the tortilla once again to lay down that first layer of really light graphite. The point of this layer, guys, is really to just have a good bottom color, like making sure there's not too many white spots, making sure that there's not a lot of rough patches, and just having a nice base layer to work with, a nice bottom layer that could shine through on areas that are not as darkened. Now I bring in I believe the 2B pencil, and I start darkening these spots. These are wrinkles in the clothes, so they're a little bit darker, but everything around it is gonna be a little bit lighter. This is a 4B pencil, and once again I start shading in the darker areas. Right here you can see it's going from dark to a relatively gray, definitely brighter area. I'm not doing extreme drastic black and gray spots. I'm trying to keep it all cohesive. I'm trying to keep it all nicely blended, like I said, right off from the bat with the pencil. After I do this, I'm gonna of course blend with the tortilla, but for now I'm just focusing on getting some nice smooth gradients, making some nice transitions with the pencil, and really layering once again another layer that, even though it might not be the sole focus at the end of the composition, these base layers play a key role in keeping everything looking cohesive and smoothed out. So right here, I'm just making sure that everything is nicely blended. Bring in the tortillon and then blend in that layer that I just did with the graphite pencil. You don't have to put tons of pressure when it comes to blending graphite, especially the darker graphite pencils, the 6Bs, 8Bs, even 10Bs. A lot of those pencils don't require that much heavy pressure to really get a nice smooth blend in. They're already heavily, the pencil itself is already very smooth. It's compressed, but when you lay it on the paper, it just falls into the paper, if that makes any sense. Right here, I grab the 6B pencil and then I just start to bring in those darker values, those really dark areas of the composition. I start to really, embed them into the paper. You guys can see here that nice transition is already going from a dark to a grayish hue. Those really dark spots, the very deep blacks, are surrounded by these semi-dark layers. They're not the darkest layers, but obviously, it goes from a very deep black to a relatively light gray. And that's all I'm doing here. First, I laid down the really deep blacks, and I'm laying down the mild blacks, I would say. Actually, this is still a little bit darker blacks, but I'm just bringing in those darker colors into the composition. And this is a 6B pencil, I believe. So as you guys can see here, I'm just adding some darker values around the already true deep blacks that I have in the composition. So you see that really deep black, that's a true deep black, but then surrounded right there as well, another true deep black, but those are surrounded by the lighter blacks that are still very dark, but they're not deep blackest, if that makes any sense. It's all about gradients, guys. It's all about identifying your values, knowing which ones are your deepest values and which ones are your lighter values, and really bringing them in together with the blending and with the layering. So this is already the third layer I've done, or fourth maybe, in this part of the drawing. And as you guys can see, it's turning out way more smoothed out than how we started. Now bringing in the tortillon and that layer that I just laid, I'm blending it again. It's all about layering and blending. That's how you get really nice gradient, smooth shading in your drawings, guys. This pretty much requires patience, obviously skill, which you could get by just literally practicing. But you definitely gonna have to be patient if you really want to get those nice transitions, those really smooth areas. You're gonna need patience. And then this is a eraser I'm just utilizing to clean up the areas around the really deep blacks. This is air, compressed air I use to blow off eraser shavings, because the worst thing you could do is use your hand to blow them away and then smudge all over. So here I'm bringing in the 6B, I believe I showed you guys, and I'm just once again doing another layer. Those really dark spots, I'm layering another darker black next to them, and really making sure that the values aren't extremely drastic, that you could tell they're smooth transitions. This particular area of the composition is just clothing, a dark cloth at that, and all it really is just, when you sit down and then your folds get all crunched up, it's those little wrinkles, and then really bringing out those little wrinkles and those little blacks and grays that go with it. Right here I'm touching up on those dark areas that have to be blended into lighter areas. So once again, another layer. Here I'm just going with the graphite. As you guys can see, I'm even touching back the other part I did previously, and I'm also just darkening. Once I'm done with this, I'm gonna bring in the tortilla and blend it in right again. A lot of times here, sometimes you can't even tell. You can't even tell just how much like graphite you're applying, because it's already so dark. There's already so many layers going on that you should really take a step back, really clear your mind a little bit, and then look at your drawing from a different perspective to really see where your values are going. That way you get a better idea of what you need to touch up and what you need to bring out, or what you need to darken, etc. So right here, I'm pretty much once again layering and making sure that those dark values transition smoothly into the gray values. That part right there is a very deep black that needs to transition, so I focused on that. I'm blending in that area again with the tortillas, making sure that the deep blacks aren't drastically cutting into light grays. So that layer I just did, now I'm blending it with the tortilla once again. And I'm even touching up the upper parts, making sure that all the shading I did with a pencil, it's all blending smoothly. Tortillas are a great tool. I recommend you guys use them if you want to up your shading materials. Of course, like anything, you're gonna have to learn how to use them, but it's not that complicated, guys. Just practice, and you'll get there in no time. Right here, I'm just touching the overall composition, making sure that my values, they're blending smoothly. And I'm even grabbing the AB pencil and then just going over those really deep blacks to really embed them into the paper, and making sure that they stand out. The deep blacks, and this will be a whole other video I'll make, but deep blacks are key to really making sure your composition looks a little bit more realistic, a little bit more eye-popping. So I focus on really getting those deep blacks in there. And like I said, these pencils are amazing when it comes to layering those extremely dark values. We just can't do this with some regular pencils, man. It's a great investment, definitely. So right here, I'm touching up the little edges of the cloth that the child is wearing, and creating a very distinct transition. You know, this part of the clothing is right next to a whitish area of it, so if you get that really deep black, you could really make it stand out and make it really pop. That way you could tell that there's, a different piece of clothing going on, and there's different layers going on in the picture itself. Right there, I'm touching up the really dark spots once again. That area is extremely dark, so I'm making sure that it stays very dark. Just going in another layer. I think we're at probably 7-8 layers now, guys. And now that I finished that, I'm bringing in the tortilla and I'm blending it in again. You don't have to blend every time you lay down a layer. It's really up to how the composition is looking, really up to how much blending transition, how your gradient is looking. So it's not necessarily, you're just, as you practice and you pick up on your values, you'll realize when you need to blend, when you don't. Because if you blend a lot, you could also take away texture, and then sometimes texture actually adds realism to your picture. So if you want to get that more, realistic look, texture is another thing to really focus on. So over blending could take away the texture. But in this case, everything's extremely dark and there's not much texture going on in this composition. So I decided to just keep blending, keep bringing in those dark values and transition them into the smoother gray values. Touching up the top section. And now that I've finished that, I am using this little eraser. They're called Kneaded Erasers. They're not like a regular eraser. They're literally you put it down and then they pick up the graphite, literally. You don't have to move it back and forth. It just picks up the graphite, absorbs it. And then this is like a pencil style eraser, which I love to use for like highlights. They don't work. Damn, my big head is just covering. They don't help too much when you have really dark values, because the really dark values take a lot to really take them off your composition. That's why I said to watch your highlights. The kneaded erasers, they work really well for picking up graphite from really dark areas. It just absorbs it, like you'll see right here. See how the pencil eraser didn't do much, but now that I'll be bringing in the, and this is a little trick too that I use to really get fine details with a kneaded eraser. You guys see how the eraser just picks it up? You'll really notice it here. I will be going in with a kneaded eraser, and it's just gonna pick up those really dark values, and it's gonna make a really nice highlight. See how it's already picking it up. And now that I picked it up a little bit, I'll bring in the actual pencil eraser and just go over it with it, and now I have a little highlight there. I'm sure you guys have seen other artists use actually like a white pencil, a white charcoal pencil, to bring in highlights, and that's another great tool / technique that you can use to add a little bit more realism to your portrait or any type of life interpretation drawing. And now that I laid down my highlights, now I could go over with the blacks again, and really final shading, final smooth out that I do, and just making sure that all my values are nicely evenly transitioned. And now that area that was, you know, all white and very black and white looking, now it's got some nice really dark to some light grays and even highlight transitions going on. And it was all through the power of layering, guys. And that's pretty much it for this video. That's shading 101. If you guys did enjoy this video, give it a like. It helps out a lot. Consider subscribing, and let me know what other tutorials you guys would like to see. As always, thank you for watching.